Visual Studio assists you in writing readable code by automatically indenting and aligning your text. Many people use the default settings without a second thought, but with a little effort, you can configure the formatting so that you have better control over how your code is arranged. Let me show you. I'm inside Visual Studio, and I've opened a project called Formatting Your Code. This has two C# files, book.cs, I'll double-click to open that, and program.cs, and it also has a WPF user control, sample WPF control, which contains some XML markup down here. I'm going to open the book.cs file, and I'm going to show you the Smart Indent feature. Now, Smart Indenting means what happens when you hit the Enter key on one line and move to the next line. So to configure the setting, I'm going to go to Tools, Options, and I'm going to open the Text Editor node, and then I'm going to click on the All Languages. This way I can make the changes and it will affect every code editor. I'm going to click on Tabs, and I'll start by choosing None for the indenting. Now when I indent my code, like here, you notice that when I move to a new line, the cursor moves to the beginning of the line. Now if I want to get over here to align it with these other comments, I have to either press the space bar or the Tab key to get over there, like so. If I use the Smart Indenting, it'll automatically handle all of that. It uses what's called a context-sensitive indent. It looks at where it belongs. Is it in other curly braces? Is it inside an if-then statement? And determines where to put it. So watch what happens now. When I hit the Enter key, it stays aligned. Now the tabs are probably off by a couple of spaces. This is a demo, like so. Now watch what happens if I write an if statement. If. Now I pressed if and tab twice to stub in some code for me. Now I'm going to come down here and hit the Enter key. That's what I mean by context sensitive. It knows I'm inside these curly braces, so it indents it at a further level than it did above. Now my comment goes here and more. If I move outside the curly braces and hit Enter, it indents it at a slightly different level. This is the default setting, and I find it invaluable to have for arranging your code. You probably have a personal preference of whether you like tabs or spaces. There's a lot of discussion out there on which is better. I won't argue which is better, but you can choose in Visual Studio which one you want to use by going to Tools, Options, and then coming here and say, when I do a tab, I want you to insert spaces. In other words, if I press Tab and I say that the tab size is equal to 2 and the indent size is equal to 2, when I press the Tab key, if the Insert Spaces is turned on, then it'll put 2 spaces in there. If I have the Keep Tabs selected, then it'll put a tab that happens to be 2 spaces wide. So I'll come down here, and I'll press the Tab key twice, and you see that it moves over apparently 4 spaces. If I go up and I choose Edit, Advanced, View White Space, you can see these little dots here. Those represent spaces. I'll go back up and change my settings to Keep Tabs, and now I'll move down a line and press the Tab key. And now you see instead of spaces, I get the little arrows. That signifies that I'm using tabs, not spaces. Again, it's your choice. Most often you'll have View White Space turned off. My personal preference is to use a 2-space tab instead of a 4-space tab because I can get more on the screen that way. I'll turn off View White Space now. Next, I want to show you what happens when you're working in an editor like C# and you want to automatically format your document. There are some settings and tools options specific to different editors. For example, if I go to the C# editor and go to formatting, I can set up rules inside here of how my C# code is indented. Same with XAML. I can go down to the XAML section and I can specify XAML specific settings. Right, I'll start with the C# settings. I'll go up here, I'll choose C#, and I'm going to talk about new lines. What this says is, where do you want to put the new line for a brace? Do you want the brace to be on a new line for types? You get a preview in Visual Studio. Here's a class. If I place the open brace on a new line for a type, you'll see that this brace here is on the second line. But if I uncheck this, you'll see that it moves up and the brace stays on the same line as the class declaration. Same thing with methods here. I'll click on moving the method opening curly brace to this top line instead of having it on a separate line like this. Right, now I'm going to go ahead and unselect these two. I'm going to return back to my code. Notice that my class up here has the curly brace where it was. It doesn't automatically update your code once you make the changes. But if I were to write a new function right now, I can force a formatting at any time by going to Edit, Advanced, Format. I got two choices here, Format Selection and Format Document. I use this shortcut all the time, Control-K, Control-D. Let me show you how that works. I just ran that on this document, and now it knows that all the methods are supposed to have their opening curly brace on the same line as the function name. I can force that again at any time. Let me go over here to my XAML. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do a Control-K, Control-D. Now I want you to keep an eye on this line 10 here. Control-K, Control-D. Control-K, Control-D. Nothing happened. Maybe I need to go change the setting. Tools, Options. Scroll down to the XAML section, pick Formatting, and then I'm going to go to Spacing. Right now the setting is Preserve New Lines and Spaces. In other words, don't touch my XAML. I'm going to change that to say Position each attribute on a separate line. I'm going to tell it to collapse multiple lines down into a single blank line. I'll put a few extra spaces in here like that. And now I'm going to do my secret keystroke, Control-K, Control-D, and keep an eye on line 13. It auto-arranged my code. It put each attribute on its own separate line, and those multiple spaces that I had, it collapsed them down to a single blank space. Again, try that here. There's several blank lines there. Control-K, Control-D removes those blank lines. I can't tell you how many times a day I use Control-K, Control-D to format my code as I work. I find it indispensable to my sense of order while working, and I think you will too.